And welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, how are you today? I hope you're doing well. Taking a little bit of time for yourself. I just want to say welcome to today's program. It is the beginning of 2025. We've got another long 12 months ahead of us before we get to next year, and I have a few questions. What is the stock market going to do? What is political policy going to do? What is the economy going to do? Those are a lot of uncertainties. But you know what the good news is that every single year of your life, you have approached every new year with the same degree of uncertainties as you've probably got right now. And you've done it with bravery, and you have made it this far. So welcome to the program. If you're brand new to the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show, well, I am your host, Matthew Johnson, as I said before, but this is the place for practical knowledge of getting more out of your retirement. If you have struggled to really kind of figure out what are the things that I need to be doing before I actually pull the trigger on retirement, how do I get more income out of what I have worked to save? How do I even take what I've saved and turn it into income? These are the practical topics and the things that every single one of us need to know in order to be able to retire successfully. And that's what we talk about every single episode of this radio show, this podcast. And so I just want to say welcome to you. Now, today we're going to be discussing having a retirement without regrets. That sounds like a great idea, right? Sounds like a great plan. That's what all of us would have an aspiration to have as a retirement. And if this is something that's relatively new to you and you're thinking, I'm getting closer to retirement, I need something that I can rely upon to kind of help coach me and train me, and I can't be available to listen to all of these radio shows. Well, I encourage you, get a copy of my book, The Capitalized Retirement. It's available in all the major book resellers. It's had some really wonderful reviews written for it, and I'm certain it's going to be a common place in your bookshelf, something that you can pick up, you can read, to begin to educate yourself on all the various things that we need to be boned up on before we actually retire. Now, getting back to the topic at hand, how do we have a retirement without regrets? Well, I think I want to share this story with you first and foremost. At the end of every year, as a father, I've always made it, well, not always, but I would say within about the last 5 to 6 years, I have created this tradition with my children that every other year, I'll take the girls on a vacation for the last week of the year, and then every other year I'll take my sons. And in this case, this year, we went up north and we went ice fishing. Neither one of my sons had ever been ice fishing before, and so it was kind of fun to be able to see them experience that for the first time. But the reason I'm sharing the story is on one of the lakes that we were about to go out and test. It had been pretty temperate weather. It had been ranging in the high 40s. In fact, it was absolutely beautiful to be outside. You didn't even really need a big, heavy winter coat. But the one lake that we were about to go out on, we had heard from another gentleman who was just coming in off from the ice that one of his friends had fallen through the ice. Now, let me ask you the question. If you had that kind of information and you were me, would you venture out onto the ice, especially with your sons? I bet the answer is no. And so today we're going to be discussing having a retirement of no regrets by actually looking at a study that was recently done of retirees in the United States in order to determine what their regrets were. And why is that important? Why is that something that we need to be aware of? Well, I think that it's important because as the schoolmaster, it teaches us the mistakes that previous generations have made, previous retirees. And we may find ourselves in a position where, life is kind of forced our hand. We may not be able to make much of a decision one way or the other when we retire. It could be a health problem. But that being said, we want to avoid as many of the regrets that other retirees have made as is possible. And so knowing what those are, I think are very important. And especially to the start of the new year, we've got time in front of us now to be able to hopefully course correct if we find ourselves heading towards maybe a regretful decision. So what are these decisions and where did all this come from? Well, I've always been intrigued because it seems like at the beginning of every year, there is more than enough financial social media outlets that have run surveys for the previous year. And they've been able to take and consolidate all the data, all the responses, and come up with, okay, this was the question, and this is the result. And so that's what we're going to be sharing. This is an article that was written in Yahoo Finance by a young lady by the name of Carrie Hansen, and I've always appreciated her writings. And so as we look into this, we have to say that no one ever wants to look back on their decision to retire as a regretful one. So it's not necessarily just one decision that we can make that causes us to regret our retirement, but rather generally a culmination of many, many decisions. And we could probably go on for hours on this topic, but we're only going to look today at the top 5. So what's number 1? What is the number 1 regret that all of the thousands of retirees that they surveyed came up with? Well, as you can imagine, the number 1 regret was not saving enough. When we think about retirement, it's been shared many, many times on this show that we want to be able to realize that the byproduct of what we get out of retirement is a direct result as to what we put into retirement. When a person is saving in the 401k, when they're saving in the Roth, when they're saving in the 403b, or whatever means of retirement savings they get access to, it is absolutely crucial that you continue to save, and you save, and you save, and you keep saving. When we think about the amount of money, the number 1 fear the retirees have today is not dying. The number 1 fear is running out of money. Well, mathematically, what's one of the things that you can use to never run out of money? And that's to save more than what you think you'll need, right? This is very much like, if you had to go camping in the wilderness and all you had to keep you warm was the fire that you had built. Every Cub Scout and Boy Scout leader that I've ever been around has always taken and encouraged his youth to cut more firewood than you think you're going to need, right? Well, that's very much similar to retirement savings. We know that the cost of living is continuing to go up. It's continuing to increase, and our dollar is buying less and less. And so if we don't want to have the regret of not saving enough, we need to continue to make it a priority. Every person who works for an employer that has a 401k or a 403b, you get the decision every single year as to how much of your paycheck you want to defer into that retirement savings vehicle. And so I always encourage clients, if they're still working and they're still saving and putting money aside, they want to be able to increase the amount that they're deferring. Maybe it's 1% a year, maybe it's 2% a year, just incrementally increasing the amount that they're deferring. Number 1, that's going to help you with the taxes, because if you receive a pay raise, now you have obviously more income, and that's going to create more taxation, but you can mitigate some of that by putting more of that wage into your retirement savings vehicle, and that's going to help to bring the taxes back down again. It's a very easy system to run and to operate and to make certain that you're paying attention to from year to year. So it was interesting to me, but it was not surprising. So what's number 2? What's the second regret that people have? And this one, I hope, really hits home. Number 2 was tapping Social Security too soon. I have talked about Social Security so many, many times on this program and in my monthly webinars and in my book and in the workshops that I teach at the various different community colleges that I teach at. And the reason that I spend so much time on Social Security and learning how to maximize the benefit of Social Security is because if you think about it, Social Security is like the bedrock of your retirement. It's the foundation of your retirement house. It's the thing that you can absolutely count on to be that guaranteed lifetime income. And I understand there are many thoughts about Social Security going out of existence. There's many questions that have yet to be answered in 2025. Is President Trump going to attempt to privatize Social Security? All of those things have been an issue, and all of those things are probably going to continue to be an issue. But the thing we need to come into when it comes to Social Security is looking at the facts. Right now, it was very intriguing to find that the average or the number one age in which people are taking and drawing Social Security is age 63. That was the most popular age for retirees in America. Now, number two was 62. And the thing I want to remind you of is with Social Security, you got to remember that if you take it anywhere prior to your full retirement age could be 66, it could be 66 in some months, it could be 67. For many of you listening to this radio show, it's 67. If you take your Social Security at 62, you're going to be giving up 30 cents on every dollar of benefit. That is a penalty that you will never, ever get back. And for most of you, I would say for most of the people that are taking Social Security today, they were not aware that they were going to be giving up so much of their benefit by drawing it that early. Did you realize that if you wait until full retirement age, not only do you get full retirement age, but if you wait beyond full retirement age, now you're getting these things called delayed credits where your Social Security benefit is going up 8% a year. And you know the interesting part about this survey here was that only 4% of people on Social Security had elected to take their Social Security at 70. That just astounds me, especially when we could be making over 128% more income. Now, granted, I understand we always have exceptions, right? We may not have long life expectancy. We may be single. We may have health problems. We may need the income. So turning it on earlier can most definitely be an option, and it is for many, many people because it has to be. But if you have longevity, if you are married and you have a spouse that has longevity, I really encourage you, don't take the bait of the psychological ownership of Social Security, saying, well, now I'm on, so now they can't take it away, because that is a psychological trap, in my personal opinion. Sit tight. We're going to be coming back to the second half where we'll look at the other 3 regrets that retirees have today. Sit tight. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the second half of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, if you're just joining us today, welcome to the program. Today we're discussing this idea of having a no regret retirement. And, you know, one of the things that we all know is if we can learn from previous generations, the mistakes that they made, the things that they regret, that sometimes can help persuade us not to make the same mistake. Now, I know for all of you parents out there, you know, there was moments and times in which you told your children, now, listen, don't do this because mom and dad did this. And if you do this like we did, you're going to end up with this result and it's not going to be very favorable. And let me guess, 100% of the time that worked, right? Absolutely not. It doesn't work 100% of the time. Sometimes it works. More than often, it doesn't work at all. But the reality is that being able to look at some of the mistakes that other retirees have made can help us make a better decision. We can help ourselves to avoid doing the things that have cost so many other retirees in such a big way that they've run out of money or that they didn't get to maintain the lifestyle or go on the trips and do the things that they wanted to do. So very quickly, just to recap, the number one regret from the survey of this article that we're looking at that was just completed at the end of 2024 showed that the number one regret amongst retirees was not saving enough. It is a direct result. The lifestyle that we get to have in retirement is generally always a direct result of what we put into our retirement savings. We can put the blame on the advisor. We can put the blame on the 401k. We can put the blame on politicians or the market. And, all of those could be plausible excuses as to why we're not enjoying the retirement we want. But in many respects, it's a lack of saving. And we have to be able to put that effort in if we're going to save and accumulate what we need. Number two was tapping into Social Security too soon. We all know that if you take it later, well, you get more, but if you take it too soon, well, you give up a lot. And, we all know that Social Security, if you've ever called in, they all tell you, why would you want to wait that long to take Social Security? Well, in some respects, they may mean that. They may actually care, and they may be saying and asking that question because they really want you to contemplate, your mortality and how long you're going to live. But let me ask you, when was the last time that you ever knew Social Security to do something good for you out of the goodness of their heart? Remember, the more people they get signing up early for Social Security, the less they have to pay. So in many respects, I think it's a bit of a shell game that's happening with Social Security, where they're trying to get you to take the bait to turn it on early because they know they'll be able to save themselves money in the long run. It's a numbers game, so don't take it personally, but it is Social Security trying to save itself. So what's number three? Well, number three is retiring with too much debt. And folks, I'm no Dave Ramsey, but I can tell you from over a decade and a half of experience with working with literally thousands of retirees, debt is a major stumbling block to having a good retirement. When you think about retiring with too much debt, the statistic is staggering. Over 7 out of 10 retirees today in America are struggling to pay off credit card debt. And especially right now, it may have gotten slightly better with the Federal Reserve taking and lowering interest rates, 75 basis points. Or up to 1% now with the October, the November, and the December cut. But come on, when you look at the credit card companies today, you look at the average balance and the amount of interest that they are charging that credit card holder. It is highway robbery. It is double-digit rate of interest that is being charged to that person. And so it's no wonder when you become retired and you're now on a fixed income and the interest rates go from 6 or 7% to now 24%, how are you ever going to get out of that hole? It feels as though, what little you can put towards that credit card for extra, you're barely making any progress. And you know what? I think that that's the way that the credit card companies like it. And so this kind of harkens back to, retiring too soon, right? This is going to be a big one when you think about people who have convinced themselves that retiring is, well, I just want to retire right now. But they don't think of the fact that, number one, if you have a lot of debt, you're going to need a lot of income to pay for that debt, and that's going to be a lot of taxes or more taxes than what you would normally pay. When you realize that you're subject to variable rates of interest on things like credit card debt or variable interest loans and the interest rates go up, these retirees today, here and now in America, are now facing that reality. And they're realizing that because of those now enhanced interest rates, that they're going to have to put some of the fun things that they wanted to do in retirement on hold. So if we look right now, 1/3 of retirees in America say that their spending is more than they can afford. 1/3. That's 33%. That's up from 4 out of 10. Okay? When you think of this, this is absolutely an epidemic that's taking place in America today. And the downside is that when we kind of listen to what the Federal Reserve is saying, the Federal Reserve is not very optimistic that in 2025 they're going to be cutting a whole bunch of times the interest rates. You see, right now, I think, quite honestly, the Federal Reserve is scared spitless of President Trump. They're scared that he is going to bolster the economy. They're afraid that he's going to grow the economy, that the economy is going to surge, and that's going to undo a lot of what they did when they were raising interest rates to try to slow the economy down and get inflation under control. They're afraid of that. And so they're very tentative at this point. And so if you're out there and you've got a lot of debt and you're thinking it's going to be okay, I'm going to be able to retire and maintain that debt and pay that debt off, well, I would ask you to question whether or not that's truly reality. Because these higher interest rates may last longer than what you anticipated. And that could turn into a very regretful decision on your part. So what's number 4? Well, I kind of let the cat out of the bag a moment ago, but number 4 is the timing of your retirement. When I read through this article, it seems as though right now, over 30% of retirees in America feel as though they did not time their retirement properly. They retired too early. Now, when you think about this, I want to think about the opposite of this. When you think about working just a little bit longer, there could be a potential whole host of opportunities and things that can benefit you. For instance, if you're working longer, you can pay down that debt that we just talked about with number 3. You can improve your Social Security benefits. Think about it. Your Social Security benefits are based upon your work record, and the bigger your work record, if they truly do take the highest 35 years of earnings, well, if you work longer, you know that you're probably getting paid more today than you were 35 years ago. So the reality is that you can improve vastly the amount of Social Security benefit that you will eventually be paid from the system if you work a little bit longer. It allows you to continue to put savings away. You're able to continue to put into that 403b, that 401k. You're able to get that match. Now, that helps you in a tax standpoint, but it also helps you from the standpoint of just accumulating more, being able to save more dollars. It also helps to get you closer to Medicare. When you think about one of the biggest expenses that a retiree potentially might have, obviously you've got things way down the road when you're in your 80s, like convalescent care. That's a big risk. But when a person is retiring at, say, 62, just because they're eligible for Social Security, now, not only do they only get 70% of their benefits, but they also now have to figure out, okay, how am I going to bridge the gap from 62 to 65 and be able to maintain the health insurance that I need? And you may be married, and you may be married to a younger person, and now that the younger spouse may have even longer to go before he or she gets to age 65 and is eligible for Medicare. So you see, these are some of the benefits that we can reap as a result of working a little bit longer. Now, granted, if you have to retire, you have to retire. If you're to the point where you just simply can't stand going to work every single day, you've just reached the end of your rope. Your body is physically shot. Then, of course, we all understand when you retire. But is it possible that to stay busy, you want to go and you want to get a part-time job? Maybe you're still working. You're just working at a different location, doing a different thing, something that's more stimulating to you. And last but not least, it allows the personal savings that you currently have saved, no matter what that vehicle is. Maybe it's a Roth, maybe it's a 403b or 401k, maybe it's a traditional IRA, maybe it's post-tax money. But the longer you can leave that pot of money alone, the more that pot grows. And so that's a benefit as well. It's fewer years for you to tap into it. So what's number 5? What's the big finale? Well, number 5, and this is a big one, and this is the reason why I prioritize education the way that I do as a fiduciary and as an advisor. And that's looking back. The current retirees in America today is they are regretting that they did no transition planning. Now, what does that mean? It means that you're not preparing emotionally for retirement. Making that transition of working for 35, 40, 45 years or more, and then going to now a place in your life in which you don't even have to get up at any particular time to go to work. You don't have to punch in. You're not responsible to anyone other than you and your dog or your spouse. Well, the reality is that is a big transition. It's a mental transition. It's a physical transition. And as I've talked about many, many times, we cannot forget to address the issue of preparing for that retirement, making certain that we have the plan in place for how we're going to replace our income, how we're going to take our Social Security, how we're going to take the pension, how we're going to convert that big money, that big pot of money that you've worked so hard to save into income that is sustainable and that is maximized so you can have the income that you want in retirement. These are all things, including the psychological ones, like what am I going to do with myself when I retire? What hobbies am I going to reacquaint myself with? Well, I hope today has been stimulating to help you understand the regrets that so many retirees are experiencing in today's world so that you can help have the education and the knowledge to be able to make the decisions that are correct for you so that you can have the retirement that you deserve. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.